So what I want to cover in this lesson is how to get from where we started, which is, okay, you've made a killer first impression. You've got the right sort of inner mindset and belief. You're going around, you're treating people like people, you're maybe messing around a little bit. How do you get past that, 0 seconds to 5 minute mark? How do you take it from 5 minutes on to 10 minutes, to 20 minutes, to 60 minutes, to the point where you've actually made a serious connection with another human being? This goes beyond just making them think, I like that person. This goes to the point where they're genuinely willing to help you and you actually have an ongoing sort of relationship. So that's why this part is so critical. So we're going to talk about expert flowing conversation, but first, what I want to do is debunk a very, 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 very common myth. And I was on call the other day with a client of mine, and she had said she's working on being more charismatic herself. And one of the things that she was concerned about is that she hadn't had a very exciting week. And that was sort of making her reluctant to engage with people because she didn't feel like she had a lot to share, like a lot to say. And this is a very, very common mindset. People talk about what's new. They talk about the weather, who the baseball team played, what's going on at their college, what's going on at their work. They share news. And this is why it can be really exciting when you haven't seen someone in 2 months and a lot has happened. You're like, God, I have so much to say. We're going to be able to talk for hours. Except other times, maybe the similar amount of time has gone by and not much has happened. So you're concerned that you don't have much to share. And this is, luckily, a fallacy. You don't need to always have a constantly new stream of things in order to relate and connect to people and to get them, quite frankly, to like you. What you do need to do is focus on two different parts. The first one is going to be having a lighthearted, jovial, funny, silly conversation. The second part is being able to relate to people on a bit more serious level about your values. So the news does play part of small talk, but we actually want to cut that small talk down. So 2 parts, primarily joking, lightheartedness, and secondarily seriousness, right? That is going to be hugely, hugely, hugely helpful for you guys. So stories are incorporated in the seriousness part. We're going to touch on those a little bit later in a different video. For now, let's just stick with the joking and the seriousness, and we're going to unpack all of those and what they mean throughout the rest of this video. So before we go on into the 2 different kinds of conversation, right? You've got the funny, lighthearted stuff, and you've got the serious stuff, which is, not sad, but more related to values and how you relate to other people. Before we get into that, there are some mindsets. They're going to underscore all 3 of those things, or all 2 of those things. 3 mindsets, 2 things. So these mindsets are this. First off, I like to think of a conversation as an opportunity for me to just spread ammo all over the place. And because I used to play video games when I'm a kid, I think of the old James Bond game where they had those little boxes of ammo that you could just run around and pick up. And when there was more ammo, it was just easier to play. What is going on in a conversation is that every word you say has a potential number of ways you can take it. If you say, for instance, I'm a consultant, you either know what a consultant is, you're interested what a consultant is, or you have a question about consulting, right? There are a limited number of conversational threads. If you say, I'm a consultant and I work in Chattanooga, Tennessee, primarily with startups, there's a number of more threads there, right? You can talk about all the things of consulting, but maybe you lived in Chattanooga. Maybe the other person knows something about the South. Maybe they like grits, or maybe they worked at a startup or had a friend who does. The point is, the more that you put out there, the more the other person has to respond to. So a lot of times people come to me, they go, I didn't know what to say next, I froze up. And the issue was, it's not that you need to constantly have a new reservoir of questions. It's that you need to take the ones that are already existing and out there and just add more information to them so that the other person has something to relate to, something to latch onto that they can add to. And I always, always find when people are like, I freeze up in conversation, we go fine, and then things just stall, it's because they actually are covering a fair amount of topics, but they're not going any deeper. They're oftentimes answering the questions very surface level, as opposed to just giving more expository background information. We've talked about when you talk about where you're from or what you do, how it's helpful to give the why of that. This applies across conversation. So put more out there. Spread ammo around for yourself. Second, related to this, when you're thinking about what ammo is the best, at the very, very beginning, and this is not true always, right? At like super, super awesome elite levels of conversation, you're directing it a little bit more than this. But we don't need to touch on that right now. It's honestly too complicated and is not going to be helpful. So for the beginning, when you're thinking, what types of things should I say, don't filter. This is the biggest thing for beginners, because so many people, when I start to work with them, I realize have interesting, funny, engaging things to say at the tip of their tongue all the time. But for some reason, they got it in their head that they couldn't say that thing. So, two examples. I may have mentioned these before, but they stick out in my mind because I just was like, oh my God, this is perfect. So, working with a client, same woman I mentioned earlier, and she had asked, she had this question. She's like, I feel like people sometimes ask me questions and I don't know what to say, or I'm out and there's just, I don't know what to share. So I said, all right, tell me about a time this happened. She was talking about, there was this one time she was in a gym with her personal trainer who she just met. And he said, all right, so, tell me about yourself. And she was just stunned by the enormity of the question. Like, here's this guy that she doesn't know asking her to tell about herself. I mean, does he mean job? Does he mean where I live? Does he want my educational background, what I do for fun? And so she said, she sort of just stammered and, gave her job title. Now I said, well, what was going on in your mind? And she said, well, I was thinking like, wow, that's an awkward question. Like, how am I supposed to even begin to answer something like that? And I said, hold on, pause. If you had just said exactly what you said to me with a smile on your face, he would have laughed, clarified the question, and you would have moved on. So if she had just said, that is a huge question, and I don't even know where to begin, he would have laughed and moved on from there would have allowed her to move on in the conversation. So one thing to consider is that oftentimes what is on the top of your mind, the tip of your tongue, is okay to say. One more example, this woman was out with a group of friends and they were basically gossiping about someone. And this is a group of friends who didn't get together often. And she was thinking, I want to say something to move this conversation away from this topic, but I don't know what to say. I said, stop. What are you thinking in that moment? Like, what are you thinking to yourself? She said, well, I was thinking, we don't get to see each other very often. It's really, really great when we do, and it'd be a shame to spend it just talking about the woman who isn't here. And so I said, okay, pause. What if you just said that? And the truth is, if she had just said that, people would have listened. Probably they would have recognized her as a leader in the group, and then they would have moved on. So those two stories are just sort of to underline to you that the most important thing is that you're spreading ammo and not so worried about what it is. You don't always have to have a master plan in conversation. The truth is, it's going to develop organically. You need to use your body, your eyes, your mouth, your tongue, everything to convey the emotion of what you're talking about. And one thing I saw, so we had this previous class where we workshopped, what do you do, where are you from? And I realized what comes very easy to a lot of people is that trepidation state of a story. So I watched a lot of people tell their what do you do stories, and like, so, I was at this job and I just wasn't sure that it was for me. So I was thinking about what I wanted to do, and I decided that I'm going to start my own business. And what I realized is that the first part of that is like very engaging. There's a sense that there's a hook there. There's like a turn coming. And then emotionally, the wind just sort of gets sucked out of the sails, right? There wasn't like, I'm going to do my own thing and it's awesome, or I'm really excited about it. And what I've sort of come to realize is that a lot of people have difficulty expressing happiness, excitement, joy in like outwardly visible ways. And they have difficulty making a habit of it. Do that. And the way to do that is to engage your body. So specifically, things that you can work on, like speaking from a smile. This is speaking from a smile. I can talk like this for a long time. If I don't, it's because I'm in the room alone with the camera right now, and it's not very engaging. But when you talk, and there is exciting, you're talking about quitting your job and like moving across the world, you can activate your eyes and your smile by speaking from a smile. Just think laughter, right? That's going to get your eyebrows, your eyes, corners of your eyes, your smile to engage. Second thing, and I don't recommend focusing on all of this at once, is to add one more gesture per day, right? So this is just something to think about. If you have a ton on your plate and you're working on a lot of the other homework assignments, don't do this. But if you have a day that you would like to dedicate to just adding one more gesture. So that normally can be, extending your hands, doing like, this sort of stuff when you're counting numbers. Pick a simple gesture. It can be this, the out, the big. I like to think of gestures as the expansive ones are the one you want to get first, and then work on the precise ones. Truth is, I don't have a lot of precise gestures. I have sweeping gestures. But those are the ones that tend to be the most captivating to a group of people or even to a single person. So those are the three mindsets that are going to underscore everything that you do in either a joking context or a more serious relating context. That's conversational ammo all around the room. Don't be discriminating about the ammo that you put out there. Don't always think that you need to have a master plan, because you don't. We're going to watch in some of the clips, the best conversationalists don't know where they're going all the time, but they seem to find their way in this miraculously genius way, and it's only because they've just put so much out there. And then the third, activate your body. This is so critical, especially for the humor part, and it makes it much easier. So without further ado, let's get into the two different kinds, the modes of conversation. So I know I said without further ado we're going to this, but I was just thinking, not everybody has necessarily read Charisma on Command or gotten into that book, and I realize the physical part of it is a little bit important. So I just want to take a few more minutes and talk about exactly what I mean by engaging your body and a couple of the mistakes that people make. So the engaging your body part, we talked about the face, the gesticulations, this is all huge. But beyond that, there's also a personal space thing, a give and take. And this comes as you have more conversations with people, it becomes more intuitive. But what I wanted to talk about is the amount of space you give people and how it affects conversation. So the first thing that you're going to want to consider with personal space is how the way that you're addressing the person is going to make them feel. And this is nuanced. So for instance, if you're out in a bar and you walk up to a guy or a girl and you face them like this is very forward. Not good, not bad. But it's direct, it's forward. So if you're going to walk up to somebody and then pretend that you have a sidelong joke like you weren't purposely speaking to them, it makes no sense. If you're going to walk up to somebody directly like this in a bar context, you better be hitting on them directly, because that is what your body is doing. What I see people do, though, is they mix their body language and the content. So they'll walk up sort of like sideways and then say, like, listen, you're so beautiful, and I just had to say. And they're already leaning back, they're walking away from the conversation. That mismatch, this is called incongruency, is going to hurt you. So I use the bar context, but you can think of this anywhere. When you're in conversation with someone, how does the way that you are addressing them, basically, are you square? Are you standing like this? Are you leaning in? Are you on your back foot? How is that affecting the dynamic? Generally speaking, what you want, what I like in most contexts, is fairly direct, right? And this is a broad generalization, but this goes for social situations, work situations, even in bars. Because what this does, it says, listen, I am talking to you, and like, you do not necessarily have permission to just turn around and walk away from me. Like, I am engaging you. The way that I counter that, and I get that it's hard to see, is I sort of take a stagger stance. So this is me standing feet together facing you. A stagger stance is just I take one foot, move it forward 4 inches, and put my weight on my back foot. So I'm still facing the person, but if you look at my body, it's sort of aligned back. This gives the person extra space between he and I, or she and I. And so there's a sense that I'm still addressing you, but I'm not invading your space. What I see a lot of people do that can make others run away from them is they sort of lean forward like this. They stagger step and then put their weight on the front foot. That can be very uncomfortable. So generally speaking, generally, and because I want to make a simple rule, it is very helpful to have a stagger stance and sort of be on your back foot. This lets the person know, I'm talking to you, I'm engaging you, I'm not saying walk away from me, but you have space, right? You have space to move. I'm not going to get up in your grill. Super helpful. So quick touching on body language. It's extremely nuanced, and you need to watch out for this stuff. But I figure a helpful go-to rule for most situations would be in order at this point. So now, without further ado, now we're going to get into the two different modes of conversation, and we're going to start with the one that I like the best, which is comedy and joking. We're going to talk now about all the cool ways that you can go and be funny. By all the cool ways, I actually mean rather limited scope, because what we're going to do is not necessarily touch on how to be super witty or super clever and punny. I'm going to talk about the easy ways to be funny, the hacks, and you're going to learn more about that in just a second. But in going through this, there's one main overarching theme, which is that life is not a job interview. You don't have to answer every single question with 100% honest, factual, meaningful information. You can mess around. You can take somebody's serious question and turn it into a joke to brighten their day, make them laugh, and then give them the information that they're seeking. This is what the most charismatic people do. They intersperse, okay, like helpful, move your life on, like this information, you can take it with you to the bank, and I'm just totally screwing with you, ha ha ha. So to give an example of what, this is just something that happened recently. We were in the elevator coming up to our room or going down from our room, and there was a person who didn't have their key card. And so they'd like ridden the elevator like 2 or 3 times trying to get to their room. So we said, we saw them sort of trying to find out what was going on. And we said, do you guys like need a key card to get to your room? They're like, oh my God, thank you. We've been hoping that someone would just like hit the button for us. We're like, you can just ask. So put it in, swiped it, went down to ours, and then hit the button for them to go back up to theirs. And as I was walking out of the elevator, I turned around and said, enjoy your robbery. And the whole people, everyone in the elevator laughed, doors shut. The people in the lobby were like really confused at first. I was like, no, they're just going to drop some rooms, not a problem. But everybody gets it. It's a joke. The entire situation was totally facetious. That type of stuff in your interactions, giving the information, right? Here you go, get to your room, but adding a layer of jokiness onto it is what the most charismatic people do. And it's how you keep people engaged and captivating. Like, information is good and when it's useful, but even the most fascinating of lectures is going to lose, I guess, a bit of its steam if there's not a level of levity that is in it too. So I'm going to go to the videos here because these will be more fun and they'll be more engaging for you, and you'll learn faster. And then we'll come back and sort of break down some of what's going on. So I want to use this video to demonstrate a number of comedic tools at your disposal. And the reason that I'm using this video is because there's a ton of ways to be funny, right? You can be super witty, you can have very fast lateral thinking, but the truth is that those ways are kind of hard. Like, it takes a fair amount of training to be really, really fast or really, really witty, or to make incredibly smart connections between puns and words. These ones are sort of what I consider comedic hacks. They're the ones that I like because they're much, much easier. And the thing that makes them a hack is that they require courage, right? This is sort of a theme that I am developing and have seen in so many areas of life. But when you have courage, everything in life can become easier. There's a faster way to get promoted if you're courageous. There's a faster way to find a boyfriend or a girlfriend if you're courageous. And there's a faster, easier way to be funny if you're courageous. So you're probably thinking, like, how do I be courageous and funny? That's what this video is for. So this is going to highlight a number of different ways that you can go about doing that. So just pull up and we'll watch now.
Say you're cute and stuff? Like, don't they say great things about you?
Will Smith, I liked him in Bad Boys, but he got some big-ass ears.
So what I want to highlight right here, and something that you'll see over and over again, is that Will Smith speaks louder than everyone else on the set, right? He talks over people, he talks loudly, and in this situation in particular, he puts on a silly voice. The joke that he makes, and he'll continue to do this throughout the interview, is not incredibly funny. If you wrote it down on a piece of paper, it's not hilarious. But he does it in a voice that just makes people laugh, and they don't even know why half the time. So we'll keep going here and just sort of see how this plays out.
There's a thread out there that I read that told me I should get an ear transplant because my ears are too big.
Stuff like
Heather,
that.
you have never scrolled down to comments.
I never Google myself. My friend said Googling yourself is like cutting yourself.
Yeah.
It's a
Same as cutting yourself.
Now, children, listen. This should be a lesson to you. Never Google yourself.
So right there, again, the biggest laugh that people have gotten, and this is what I mean about courage. This is conviction and commitment to the joke. It's not hilarious. He's like looking into the camera, he's got his hand there, but he's louder than everybody else. He puts on a slightly dopey, silly voice that's faux serious, and gets everyone to crack up. It's not because the words that he has are incredibly funny. It's because he is committed to the joke, and he involves a tone of voice that is different, a volume of voice that is way above everyone else, and he's using his body. That's the theme that you're going to see again. So I just want to skip through. We've got another marker up here. What about here?
Yes. Whoa. After Earth. I like how you said that. The Smith family, sci-fi.
But now, because
so again, watch this again.
3.
Watch the amount of times that Will Smith makes this joke. Obviously, he's putting on the voice, but listen to how the laughter sort of develops.
And well, let's start with the Smith family sci-fi adventure epic.
Yes. Whoa. After Earth. I like how you said that. The Smith family, sci-fi.
So sci-fi gets none. Epic gets a chuckle.
But now, because it opens here on the 7th of June.
And after he does it 4 times, people just continue to laugh because he's committed to it. So let's just continue to
what do
watch
people need
this.
to know about it? What do you tell us?
What I tell you, well, you know, the movie is really, you know, the epic sci-fi action adventure with all of the...
I said that one.
Yeah, I know.
They know that.
I was reiterating, Graham.
And again, this is just another example. That was not funny. All he did, and I don't mean to criticize, it's not funny on paper. But he put on a voice, acted it out with his face, and gets the biggest laugh of everyone else. This is what I mean by courage. Have the courage to make your jokes loudly. Have the courage to commit to it by entering into a persona, a voice. Get your body in there. And again, you're going to see this a number of times.
No, but it has all of that stuff. But really, what's great is at the center of it, it's a father and son. Let's pray.
So we'll watch the setup for this one.
He has to look when you run, you know. So I had him.
And again, so this is more commitment. He's seen it with his voice, his tone. This is what I call committing with your body, right? This is involving physical comedy into the act.
Train with a sprinter because that's the most athletic-looking run. Because if you know.
In life,
like,
you're
let's
like...
pray. I'll save you, sweetheart. I'll save you. It's like, that guy's not
So
a
if you listen, so this is interesting. There are other people in this interview who stand up. I don't want to pull it out, but they stand up for like a second at a time. Listen to the laughter compared to how many times Will Smith runs around the table. He doesn't just do it once, he does it twice. And listen to the laughter on the second time.
In life,
like,
you're
let's
like...
pray. Let's pray. I'll save you, sweetheart. I'll save you. It's like, that guy's not a movie star.
So this illustrates a point that oftentimes all you have to do to get laughter is to continue to push a joke. Now he had it at the beginning, but in doing it one more time, and I'll save you, sweetheart, add in that little bit, people cracked up. So there is a comedic rule of 3, right? You add 3 details. That tends to get people to laugh. You don't need to stick necessarily to the rule of 3. But what you do need to realize is that you might be saying things that have the potential to be very funny, right? This joke comes to your mind. You're like, you know when people run like this and they stand up? But you keep your arms tight to your body, and you don't allow yourself to get goofy with it. And you only laugh the table once, and then you sit down and look around to see if people are laughing at you. Will Smith has the courage to stick with the bit, right? He runs around because it's funny to him, because it's amusing to him, and he expects the people around him to find it funny as well. So this is really, really, really important. Courage and commitment in the sense of humor means sticking with the jokes, continuing them, saying them loudly. How many times have you started to tell a joke but sensed that people maybe weren't paying attention and just trailed off? That kills your chance of being funny. You have to believe that people will listen. You have to speak as if you're meant to be heard. So this is just one more thing that I want to highlight towards the end of this.
Instead, of course, Karate Kid, big hit, your own movie, big hit.
Oh, wow. I love that picture.
That's nuts. You can't.
Hey, man, come on.
You did that.
This is a family
You did that,
show.
and you went there.
Family show.
I am not saying that.
I mean, we can see it. We know what it is.
Again, so he made a clever joke about the nuts, but then pushed it. That was where he got the big laugh. It was on the second. We can see it. We know what it is. That people actually start to crack up. And this is huge. Will Smith laughs all the time. The funniest people, with rare exception, laugh more than most people. And what you'll find, a lot of people have a friend like this. The friend who like tells a joke and then laughs at him himself, and it's not even that funny, but because he thinks it's funny and he has a goofy laugh, everyone around him takes part. So this is exactly what Will Smith does all the time.
You can't do that anymore.
No.
So that's it for this video. Move on to another one for just a couple more examples of how you can be funny easily, right, without having to train at an improv school. So this is a really short clip of Russell Brand, but very quickly it illustrates two pieces that are just, it's phenomenal. So the first one, very quickly, there's going to be a laugh, and all it is in the delivery of the word thanks. And what I want you to notice is how he just says it differently, and he says it with a smile on his face. He shouts it. This is an easy opportunity for laughter, and it's how Russell Brand gets a ton of the laughs that he does.
So nice to have you on the program, you magical man, you. Thanks. You just...
All he did there was defy expectations by shouting thanks. Super simple. So moving along, the next thing you're going to see here is word choice. You might have noticed this before, but there's a bunch of comedians out there that 90% of their jokes are based on the specific words that they used. I know he's fallen out of fashion, but Dane Cook is one of them. If you watch any of his sets, so many of his jokes hinge on the choice of words that he uses, and I can pull up a handful of these. But it's all about how he picks this weird word and then accents it. And you're going to see this here with Russell as he just talks about whatever.
Gee, you're such a delightful presence. I always say that. You come in, I never know what you'll be wearing. But you have such a good spirit. You know?
Thank you very much. These accoutrements are, of course, temporary. All of these clothes will eventually end up in the rubbish bin of history. But for now, aren't they lovely?
Yes, you look fantastic. Look what you can do with your legs.
So again, he's adding the body movement, the physical comedy at the end, but the word accoutrements, rubbish bin of history. You can imagine if you were to go out and trying to be goofy, like complimented someone and said, "Oh my God, that is a lovely necklace that you have," right? Sort of funny because you put on a voice. But if you were to look and say, "Ah, I love the accoutrement of your sapphire necklace," it instantly becomes more interesting, more funny. So think of this. The specific word choice that you choose is going to make things funnier, combined with the tone of voice that you choose. So when you say accoutrement, put on the fake French guy voice, similar to Russell. If you add the physical comedy, you can make words that aren't funny, jokes that really don't have a punchline, get people around you to crack up for reasons that they honestly don't know. So it's a very powerful skill when you start to combine all of these things. So I want to talk now about joke themes versus canned jokes, pre-planned jokes. Now, like, what's the difference? So a pre-planned joke is a very dad thing to do, right? So if somebody says, "What time is it?" and dad jumps in and says, "Time for you to get a watch," right? It's got a 1-to-1 ratio. Somebody says a set of words and dad responds with an exact joke. Truth is, there's nothing wrong with these types of jokes. They can be a little bit corny, but they can also be hilarious. The problem is there's just a terrible return on investment. Like, you need to memorize a joke for every single situation that could ever occur. Not the best use of time. What's much better to do is to have joke themes, like habits that you can take with you anywhere to all sorts of situations. So I'm going to give you a handful, and I've stolen these from movies, other people. Like, I am a horrible joke plagiarist when it comes to this, but I always try to add a little bit of flavor and make it my own. So first one that I think of is like a fake professional is what the name that I've given it right now. It's any sort of situation. I will make a joke that I'm a pro or that the other person is a pro at it. So take the elevator again, right? Standing in the elevator, people walk in. You pop it in and you say, what's floor? 6. They say, "Thank you." You go, "No problem. I'm a professional." Right? There's a chance. You go to order at Chipotle. I'm sorry for going to the same things. My days are very monotonous. But say that you go to order at the Chipotle And you order, and you're like, dude, black beans, chicken, this, that. And he goes, right away, sir. Boom, boom. You're like, damn, man, like, you a pro at that. Nice job. That sort of thing is just relying on the same theme. So professional is one of them. One that I've stolen from, I think it's Step Brothers, is like, you know, do we just become best friends? Anything that happens that you like and you see someone, you can high five them and ask them if you just became best friends. Other ones, this one I think I stole from Old School, where Will Smith is standing there at the debate, and he's with that talking head political commentary guy, and he just goes off on a complete rant talking about democracy and the republic, and then he goes, I think I just came out of a blackout. I steal that and use that in all sorts of situations. So anytime that I do something cool or fun, I'll just be like, well, I think I just came out of a blackout. And I can use that all the time. It's good for a laugh. So those are 3 examples. I don't say those so that you can do them, though you can. I've got no copyright. What I say them for is so that you realize one of the best ways to reliably be funny is to have themes of things that you know are funny and can take with you. And the truth is, if you're like, that sounds a little bit pre-prepared, man, everyone is doing this subconsciously already. You're making the same jokes over and over again that are getting predictable responses. We're all dads in the end, right? We all have these habits that we go to. Just be more deliberate about it, right? So when you watch a comedy, what I actually have, I have an Evernote that I've like switched into Google Drive and all that sort of stuff that has phrases that I'm just like, I can use that in so many different places. I can play with it. I can expand upon it. I can heighten it. I can build a world with that. Things that to me are funny that I take with me. So I literally have a document. And honestly, if it makes sense, I can share it. We can figure it out if you guys are going to be able to understand my shorthand. But what I recommend is that you build your own, because it's going to mean more to you. And you don't have to have a literal real-life document. But what you should have is a mini Rolodex in your head of go-to themes that are funny, right? And these don't need to be rote. You can add, subtract, take more, multiply. This is where like creativity comes in. Creativity is not inventing something that has never been done before. It's in repurposing and remixing old material, taking disparate things to new context. That's the essence of all humor and all human creativity. So I'm not asking you or telling you or recommending in any sense of the word that you go and be a robot, right? That you go and have a boom, boom, this is how I'm going to make people laugh. You're not a stand-up comic. But what you can have that is awesome are these conversational themes and habits that you know that you can rely on in all sorts of situations. So that is highly, highly recommended for this comedic part. I want to go ahead and give some examples of what these sort of themes look like. And so I went back to a lot of the videos that I've done before and just looked for common things that I've seen, in this case, Russell Brand say. So there's tons more out there. I know he's made this joke 100 times, but this is a joke that Russell likes to go to, which is basically when he recuses himself from any sort of guilt for fondling or ogling women by saying that it's not his fault, it's the male libido, he's just flesh and blood. So you'll see this here first off in this clip.
Anger. It's like your desk is a puzzle.
It is. I'm sorry about that.
What is
Can
the
I help
solution?
you? I think we could walk back in.
There you go, love. Be careful, because that's a low-cut dress.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
I'm only flesh and blood. I've got instincts.
Oh, okay. Well,
tell me what you need to know.
I'm just going to have a drink.
So as you can see, this makes her extremely, extremely self-aware. And if you watch the rest of this, it's clear that she really, really likes him. Not saying that she's about to jump his bones, but there is something incredibly attractive to her about him by the end of this interview. So I want to go ahead and show a very, very similar joke at the end of another interview that Russell's doing.
Eventually, that does get it out your system. I hope that doesn't sound brutal, but that is the nature of the chemical imperative to procreate. I'm sorry. I didn't design the male libido. It was some monkeys in the old days. And possibly a powerful, omnipotent force. We don't know.
And so that's the same joke again, gets a laugh. It sounds different, but the theme of the joke is that it's not my fault for the fact that I am constantly being a sexual person. It was somebody else's. I've seen him in other interviews, and I wish I could find them, make very, very, very similar statements. But that is just to drive the point home that you don't need to be this, 100% constantly treading new ground, inventive, creative genius. What you need are a handful of themes that serve in a lot of different situations. And really quick, I'll show you. This is from Russell Brand's stand-up, where he makes the same joke 2 or 3 times throughout the stand-up tour. And I'll just show you 2 of them really quick. In this case, he's talking about how he always needs to be the center of attention.
My mate Matt, when he saw that photograph, said to me, "At what point did you take your shirt off? And why?" And the answer is, of course, I recognise that the gold medals were the epicentre of the attention. I want to be the epicentre of the attention. That means I've got to get the medals, then one-up them. Shirt off plus medals trumps just medals. I win. See Brian May in the top.
First joke right there. How about needing to be the center of attention? And then...
Because I'm part of that crowd and it's that vibe of, oh my God, it's going to fucking kick off. I'm excited and I'm enjoying it, but I'm not the centre of attention, and that doesn't seem right. I see in the distance, like a police van. I think if I get on that police van, I'll be the fucking centre of attention. So I hustle through the crowd. I get on top of the police van. Sure enough, the crowd roars, yes! Like Mick with Usher. Just the visibility is enough sometimes. Yes, go on, that bloke. There's a sort of feeling that it's a positive thing that I'm doing. So I think I've got to keep these people entertained. I've got to keep their interest sustained. And what do? Like even in that Olympic photograph, I think, take my fucking top off, right? So I just rip my top off. The crowd goes, yes! Like that. They're really into it. It's a proud moment for me. Oh, fuck, I've not told you something really, really important.
So this is an example of 2 things. One, this is in the same stand-up comedy. So when he goes back to that first joke, he has an automatic laugh set up. And he actually calls it out explicitly as like that Olympic photo. This is the technical term for this in comedy is callback humor. And it's any time that you make a joke early in an interaction, or sometimes friends have callback humor that spans an entire friendship, where you constantly go back to this one joke. In The Office, it's the "that's what she said" joke is constant callback humor. Maybe a chuckle the first time, but it gets funnier and funnier and funnier as it gets built out. So this is just an example of 2 cases of having a theme to go off of and of using callback humor. Again, what I hope this does is makes comedy seem like something that is not necessarily genius and hard and like equivalent to having to create an amazing painting. It actually is just having a handful of tools that that you can go to, and of course embodying it with your body, your voices, all that sort of stuff. So now I want to introduce the concept of heightening. Heightening basically just means when you take a joke and then make it more extreme, more ridiculous. This comes very natural to a lot of people. So rather than explain the technical aspect of what's going on, I just want to show you a couple examples so you know exactly what it is and can try to incorporate it more than you probably already do in your life. So here's some back and forth between Jimmy Fallon and Jennifer Lawrence. This is how most friends actually do it. They bounce back and forth between one another, one-upping what the other one said previously to make things more ridiculous and more funny.
No, well, you don't even know the manager. But so J-Lo, Jennifer Lopez, if you're watching, we both did want to dance with you.
Just dance with us.
Just dance with us. What's the big deal? Right? Come on, we're fun.
Do some Jell-O shots.
Just like play some like barking dogs and dance with us. I mean, what's the big deal?
So here's Russell Brand. This is a single line's worth of heightening.
You are one of those people that just gets addicted. You get addicted to anything you go near.
I'll be here again tomorrow.
Yeah, because...
oh, I've got time this morning. Oh, where's Phil? Where's Ollie? Oh, Jesus Christ. Oh, this is lovely.
So the guy says you get addicted to anything, and Russell takes that to its logical conclusion, which is, I'll be here tomorrow because I love the couch and I love the shape of the building and all this sort of stuff. That is, again, classic heightening. Take what someone says and just take it to the nth degree. Very, very simple way to get a laugh. And I know that this, like, analyzing comedy can sometimes make it feel sterile, but it's important to know what the tools are, so when you're in that situation where you're like, I just didn't know what to say, I didn't know how to be funny, you can take a step back, go into your brain and be like, okay, what's a simple way to do this? Take the voices other people have thrown out, take the sentences other people have thrown out, and just heighten them. So I'll show you again another case of callback humor here, and more, or I guess this is just callback humor at this point, where Russell refers to the earlier joke about being addicted to everything.
to you now, Colin. You're going to have to. I'll be following you. What's your husband called? Dan, is
Dan,
it?
yeah.
He's going to get an earful. A lot of language.
Jumped ahead too far.
Yeah, in that bit of Snow White. So, like, you know, I'm happy mostly. I'm happy mostly when I'm being nice to other people. Then I'm happy.
Well, you were very nice to us
listen
today.
to you talk
Thanks.
all day long.
Yes, you can, because I'm addicted to you now, Colin. You're going to have to. I'll be following you. What's your husband called? Dan, is
Dan,
it?
yeah.
So there you go. I'm addicted to you, Holly. It's not as funny if it's not said before, but because it is callback humor, it makes people laugh. So again, just adding to the sort of tools that you have to be funny in a situation. We can practice all of these separately and we'll work on the exact homework, but this is sort of the pantheon of really easy to use comedic tools. You don't have to be a wordsmith or any sort of genius to make this stuff work. Honestly, what it just takes is the courage to put it out there and the commitment to say it like you think people ought to hear. Gonna move on now past this to how to relate to people, right? How do you go from, okay, I'm funny all the time, to taking things down, slowing it down, being a little bit more serious, connecting sincerely with another human being? Because both are important. If you're just the funny guy all the time, that's great, but you become the class clown. If you even watch, one of the people that I like the most, Russell Brand, he does take these opportunities to be sincere, and you're going to see some clips of this going on coming up. People tend to think that they need to have their punchlines set up before they can jump into a conversation and crack a joke. And what you find is that the most funny, charismatic, consistently hilarious people, they don't always know where the joke is, but they treat everything as an offer. Right? Every single word that is said, they play with. And so this is a video of Russell Brand on Ellen. I'm going to allow it to run more than I did the first time, so you can sort of see it live. But in the first minute or so, just notice how Russell plays with everything that Ellen says. Instead of just responding with a yes or no answer, he adds a little bit more material to it. This is sort of what I call scattering ammo around the room. So she says something, he responds in a more than one or two word response so that there are conversational threads and humor threads for him to pull on later in conversation, and they wind up tying together really, really nicely, and he looks like a genius, which is not necessarily the case. I actually think he's really hilarious. Genius we can argue about. Moving on throughout the video, the other thing that I want you to be aware of is the whole idea of being genuinely a really good expert conversationalist and being able to flow with people and keep them engaged for 20 to 60 minutes at a time or even more. The thing that is most important is that you're not a one-trick pony. Because you can imagine the one guy who just constantly is nothing but unrealistic, sarcastic jokes, that gets boring. So is the guy who just wants to talk about serious, somber issues the whole time. So this is only a 3-minute and 46-second video, but Russell switches very, very comfortably between serious and funny and serious, back and forth. So the beginning, much more funny, the end, it moves towards the serious side, all engaging.
Hi, Russell.
Hello.
How are you?
I feel very well today, thank you.
Oh, good. I'm so glad. This is your first time here, and I'm happy to have you here.
I'm very honoured to be here in this chair.
Oh, really?
So that's what I meant about scattering conversational ammo. He's not just saying, good to be here. I'm very honored to be here in this chair. He's starting to build tools, threads that he can pull on to make jokes later.
Yeah, I really like it.
Oh, good. You can come sit in this chair anytime you want.
Thank you. Do you think there will be times when it's impractical?
If someone's in it?
For example?
Yes. It depends on who's in it. They may enjoy you sitting on their lap.
It may lift the interview. They could be here, and then suddenly I'll be perched on their lap. They'll have to crane round you, but it may induce a kind of sexual energy, perhaps.
Let's try it someday.
Any of your guests, you can select one at random from a hat, and then I'll just come and perch on their knees, or if we feel very adventurous, further along towards the groin.
So this is a great example of building the world, and going to go deeper into that. But this started with, I'm very honored to be here in this chair. And as he talks about the chair and if they would be okay for people, he starts to build this fake world whereby someone would sit on his lap, and they could pull from a hat from the audience to see, and they could slide closer. That is classic improv. It's not a one hit, I know exactly where this joke is going. It builds incrementally with, slightly more unrealistic, ridiculous things. Pulling a hat to see which member of the audience will sit there, and then it's only at the end that he sees where his real punchline is.
When you were on different types of drugs, because you really do have, I mean, like, look at you. You don't need anything. You're very entertaining, and but I can't imagine, did that, because you talk about it in the first book, you were addicted to basically everything, right? Everything. Was there anything you weren't addicted to?
Like, say, vitamin C, I barely ever had any.
No vitamin C?
Scarcely, unless inadvertently someone put into some heroin. Which is, I needn't stress that heroin is very, very bad. I know that from experience now.
Right, very, very. You were addicted literally to everything.
Yes, I became addicted to heroin, crack cocaine, cocaine without the...
To show you, he started answering that question, was there anything you weren't addicted to, facetiously, right? Vitamin C, joke, joke, joke. Now he's going back into, he's actually answering her question, and you'll see then he brings it back into humor. This sort of effortless flowing between honest, sincere answers and joking around, this keeps people hooked and engaged.
Washing it up to make it into crack, amphetamines, marijuana, alcohol, moving about, looking out of windows, this position, all of those things.
And that is a classic example of moving in and out of humor. I'm going to play it again because I think it's great.
Crack, amphetamines, marijuana, alcohol, moving about, looking out of windows, this position, all of those things. I couldn't stop myself, Ellen.
And we should say it's been 8 years. You're sober now, 8 years?
I've had no drugs for 8 years.
8 years. They're very happy for you.
Oh, good.
So what I like is that you have in your Bookie Book 2, which I love the names, the first Bookie Book and Bookie Book 2. I think you send a good message to everyone thinks that fame is going to be the answer. And
so Russell's about to knock it out of the park. He's been mostly laughs up until this point, and he's a very likable guy. But it's now when he gets sincere that he is so captivating. And just watch his answer here.
And you have a really good message for teens, for fame, and for what they think that's going to do for them.
Yes, because when I was growing up, I thought that I'd be a lot happier if I was famous and successful and if I had money. And I think that's because we live in a culture that celebrates fame and commerce and consumerism and money, so that if you don't have those things, you feel like you're not enough. And I think we live in a culture that makes you think, oh, I'm a little bit too fat, or I'm too thin, or I'm not right, and I don't fit in. And I think, like, increasingly I've realised as I've tried to change and tried to adapt and amend and pursue these ambitions, that ultimately everybody has a beauty within themselves, and if you find this and accept this, then you will be happy regardless of external attributes or material things.
And that works, and that hits so hard because he has won our attention with his humor. If you were to go into every conversation and just be, how can I immediately, right off the bat, talk about my deepest, most profound values, that is not necessarily the most winning strategy. It might work some of the time, but you're going to lose attention. Russell set it up so that when he delivers that, he's got the entire audience glued because of how funny he's been, and he can make that really sincere message hit and connect, and that is why he is so charismatic. So now what I want to get to is how can you relate to people that you don't think you can relate to? And to illustrate this, I'm going to go back, as I tend to do, to a story of another client that I have. And I love using client stories because they help me, honestly, they help me learn what they need to know. A lot of this, when I went through it the first time, I didn't have a list of things. And honestly, I discovered a lot of this implicitly through trial and error and never put words to it. So it's awesome to me, and I appreciate it from you guys as well. Give me your questions. I treat them like gold. They help me become a better teacher and spread this stuff to more people. So anyways, this guy's question, he's out with someone who he really likes. Happens to be a guy that is connected, can help him with his career, can help him with his social life, just someone that he would like to have a tighter relationship with. And it's actually going quite well. The guy likes him a lot. They're joking, they're bantering, goes back and forth. And at one point, the guy says to him, he says, "So, you like baseball?" And my client is like, because he does not like baseball. Like, he doesn't know the first thing. He used to play, used to be crazy about it, he says, but honestly hasn't followed for 5 or 10 years. And in his mind, he's racing. He wants to say yes, he wants to, and he's just like, crap, I'm going to disappoint this guy. He says, no, not really. Like, I'm not a big baseball fan. And the guy goes, oh, and then sucks the wind out of the conversation, right? So his question to me was, how do I deal with that? Like, how do I like baseball for this guy and be able to continue the conversation? And my answer is, look, to relate to someone, you don't have to have their life story or their hobbies or anything, right? What you have is to just go to a level deeper, right? So, and again, this is going back to the idea of searching your brain. Whatever you have to say is okay. You don't need to relate to people when someone says, do you like baseball or beer or this, or did you hear about this story? You don't have to actually know that specific information. What you can do is peel the onion, go down a layer, whatever you want your metaphor to be, and connect on a deeper level. So I asked him, I was like, so do you like sports? He said, yeah, like, I like this. I was like, did you ever play baseball? He said, actually, when I was a kid, I used to go to every single game. I'd like sneak out of school to show up at these baseball games near my house. I said, hold on, you can say that. If you want to relate to this guy and you know that he likes baseball, match his energy. Don't worry about the fact that you nowadays don't like context. Take the energy that he's giving you, which is enthusiasm about the sport, and just take that enthusiasm and put it into a different context where you can relate. So, okay, you can't say, yes, I love baseball. I watched the Orioles game last night. But you can say, you know what? I used to love baseball. Like, I'd sneak out of school 2 or 3 days a week to go down to the diamond and blah, 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 blah. The guy does not care specifically that you currently watch all the baseball games. He's trying to form a connection, and his offer was, do you watch baseball? But if you're creative, you can form connections in a lot of different areas. Say you don't like baseball, but you like a different sport. You can go, I'm actually not a huge baseball fan, but I've been going crazy over the World Cup. Like, I'm sitting in front of my TV for 6 hours a day watching countries that I've never even heard of play soccer, right? That's one opportunity for you to connect. Even if this guy doesn't like soccer, you're connecting about the enthusiasm. So you can take almost anything that someone says, and maybe you haven't read the book, haven't heard the story, don't like the sport, but if you go down a level and say, how can I match this person's enthusiasm, excitement, and talk about something related, that gives you a chance to connect. So that's how you relate to people. It doesn't have to be on the top surface level of the explicit question that you were asked. It can be, though, on the emotional level about the excitement of what they're doing. Alternatively, you can turn it back on them. You'd be like, no, I'm actually not huge into baseball, but sounds like you're a total diehard. And they can say, yeah, blah, 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 and they'll give you more information, more conversational ammo, threads, which you can then jump in and say, oh, actually, whatever. They'll mention that they watch baseball on TV. You'll be like, I was locked up last night at 9 p.m. watching Game of Thrones because I love Game of Thrones. I don't need to go into that again. But anyway, there's a lot of different ways that the conversation can unfold rather than you needing to constantly connect on the specific question that someone asks. Take it down a level, right? Connect over emotions, enthusiasm, that sort of thing. That is how you can relate to anyone. So we've seen Russell Brand get serious in that interview, right? Take it from laughing joke, ha ha ha, to talking about like the deceptions of fame and how fame isn't all that it's cracked up to be and what's really important in this world. And that just gets like the garnered like the sort of response. Also talked about how you can relate to people, right? Even though somebody might be talking about baseball, you can talk about a love of sports or any other sort of passion as long as you can connect it and tie it to, the original question. The thing is here, these are like parts of a bigger concept which I'm going to try to elucidate now. And the concept is that in talking about the more serious side of things, most people think that they need to share facts, figures, information, gossip, occurrences. And the truth is that's like not actually what human beings connect hard over. right? The things that we connect hard over are our reasons, our values, our emotions. Because on the surface level, our lives are all very different. We come from different places. We might speak different languages. We certainly have, a 100% different life experience, except for the times that we were in the same place, seeing the same events from different perspectives. So on the surface level, everything is 100% different. But in bringing it down and thinking about, why do people do what they do? What is important to them? What is ultimately proven to not be important to them? Those values. That is where people can connect genuinely. And if you think of the Russell Brand example, she asked him a question about drugs and he was able to take it to the deception of fame and the deception of what a lot of people pursue. That is what we want to do. And if you've noticed, what we've worked on with where are you from, what do you do for your job, etc., is not answering the question with those surface level job titles and facts and figures and experiences that people, quite frankly, don't share. What we've talked about is injecting your own story into it in a way that is relatable to other people because you're talking about emotions, motivations, those sorts of things. This is a bigger concept. This isn't just for where are you from. It's not just for what do you do. This is for everything in conversation. Because if people ultimately are going to connect over your values, you want to put them at the forefront of everything that you do. And unfortunately, when most people talk, they're just grasping to say as many random occurrences and things, and did you see that, and wow, that band's good, the weather's nice today, did you see the game? People talk because they're nervous on a very surface level. But if you can force yourself to bring it down and know what it is that ultimately drives you, you will connect with people much more quickly. So ask yourself, the first step is to know basically who you are. Why do you do what you do? Why don't you do some of the other things? So we've talked about my example of where I'm from, what I do. A lot of what I talk about is how important people are to me. I talked about how I left New York City, went to Brazil because I enjoyed the culture down there, the openness, the affectionateness of the women. That comes up all the time, and I get to share that. For you, it might be something totally different. But what I want you to realize is that every single questioner, at least 99% of them, have an opportunity for you to bring in your values if you know what they are. So take this moment to ask yourself questions. First, what is important to you? What tends to drive a lot of your actions? Is it honesty? Is it fun? Is it doing the right thing? Making the world a better place? Right? And then when people ask you questions, how can you reveal that to them? How can you basically say, here's what I'm all about? Because that is where you guys will form a connection. Also ask yourself, this is very similar to the Russell Brand example, what in your life makes you different value-wise from everyone else? Or what has proven to be a deception? Something that you thought was once important. You maybe used to work hard to make a lot of money, or you used to think that you needed to please your parents in everything you did, but turned out that now you live a different way. And that's exactly what Russell Brand does when he talks about fame, right? He says, everybody holds this on a pedestal. I did too. It was supposed to fill a hole in my heart, and I found drugs to replace that, and it's all just a bunch of crap. And then everybody claps, because that is him putting front and center the things that are important to him. And just to tie this home, because I get it, it's a very heady concept. This is something that happened literally, last night, the night before. I was out with, in a club, talking to a group of girls, and the topic of cheating came up. Now, okay, how do I relate to someone who's talking about cheating? I've never cheated. Can I talk about somebody I know that cheated? Can I make a joke about cheating? Sure. All things that are available to you. Generally speaking, when someone talks about cheating, what I talk about is my value with regard to that. And for me, honesty in life is just absolutely 100% critical. I need to be honest with myself all the time, and I need to be honest with the people around me all the time. So when the topic of cheating came up, I basically just said in no one specific way that I think that the worst thing about it is that that person is proving themselves to be completely untrustworthy and unreliable. Because honesty isn't if you're honest most of the time. The only way you know if someone is honest is if it costs them, if it's inconvenient for that person to be honest. So when you put a beautiful guy or a beautiful girl in front of someone who has a boyfriend, and they elect to hook up, but it was just one slip, that to me is a flagrant indicator that that person is not trustworthy when it's not convenient to them. And we, had this discussion and talk, and I monologued for a bit about what I think honesty is and how important it is to me and how much I respect people who are honest in difficult times when it's hard to fess up. And I will promise you and tell you, in that moment, the girls that were watching, their eyes glazed over and they went goo-goo because it's very, very, one, attractive to have that belief, but two, to put it out there, right? To reveal any sort of driving force for why you do the things you do is incredibly attractive. You can talk about service level trade stories and gossip about who's cheating on who, celebrities, blah, blah, blah. But when you look inside, and I highly suggest you do that now, in fact, take a moment to think through or write down, what are the things that are important to me in life? And I've talked about mine: fun, being honest, being affectionate, right? Those are the sorts of things that are important to me. What are the things in life that have proven to be deceptions? And I've, status and prestige, money, pleasing everyone around you, right? And how can you create little stories, if you will? They're not necessarily like beginning, middle, end with a person, right? How can you illuminate these for other people when the opportunity comes? So I've indicated, I talk about honesty when cheating comes up. When I see someone lie, I talk about honesty. When I see someone out and they're touching and they give a hug, I praise them and say how awesome I think it is that they hug other people, because affection to me is like, the most important trait I look for in a girl. I'm looking for someone who just can't keep their hands off of me, who is very friendly with everyone, who makes people around them feel good. How can you work your values into conversation? The reason to do this is because that is how you're going to connect with other people. Every question, every conversation has an angle where this sort of stuff can be seamlessly inserted. You just have to know it. You have to take the moment now to reflect and think about what your values are, what your anti-values are, right? What things you think are not good, you should not be doing, and then find ways in conversation to insert them. So we can talk about the specifics of your conversation, where they come in, but first thing, this is important to you, is to sit down, write them out, describe why, why that thing is important, why that thing isn't important or isn't important. If there's a story that sort of goes along with how you realize the importance of that thing. And that will enable you to connect with people so much more, because this is like the crack cocaine of human interaction, is this deep stuff. I get it. I'm sorry. It's heady. We'll talk about bringing it down to conversation in class, but take the time now to write that sort of stuff out, because it's going to be really, really, really helpful. And so now for everyone's favorite part of this, the homework assignment. And you can imagine that the homework today is going to be twofold, because we talked about two major ways to communicate with people. You've got the fun, airy, light side, right? Putting a smile on people's face, and then you've got the more serious side, connecting on values, that sort of stuff. So for the first part, what I want you to do is take what we started last week, which is just sort of messing around with people, particularly service people, and add to it, right? Now you have more tools. You've got comedic heightening, right? So taking jokes to the second, third, fourth extreme to get that laugh. You've got building the world. You've got engaging your body, your eyes. You're using physical comedy, themes of comedy, right? Knowing that you can use certain phrases, certain jokes in a myriad of situations. Go out and try to make people laugh. Don't answer every single question immediately in a serious way, right? In a way that conveys factual information. Answer it in a way that will first make them laugh, and they go, no, like, actually, blah, and reveal the truth of, what that person is actually asking about. If you want black or pinto beans, whatever. The second part, and this might come right after that first part, is that also focus when you're talking to people about including relatable things. And those relatable things are going to be your motivations, your values, the driving emotions of why you do the things you do. First step to that, sit down, write it out. Why do you do the things you do? Why don't you do certain things? What emotions are you looking for in your life? What impact do you want to leave on the world? All of those are really, really, really good places to start, to sort of tease the stuff out. And then spend a little bit of time thinking about. And this can be a bit complicated, and it's very specific to your specific list of what's important. So we're going to work on it on call. But if you can, try to work those into conversation. So for instance, if yours is honesty like mine, whenever questions of honesty come up, bring that sort of stuff in. So cheating is a clear example. If in the news you guys are talking about a company that is lying on their books or whatever, when questions of honesty come up, bring in your value of honesty. So 1, make people laugh using all the tools at your disposal. 2, go deeper faster. Put out the things that people can relate to, your values, your emotions, and your motivations. So that's going to be it for Expert Flowing Conversation. More to talk about on the call, which I'm quite excited for. Hope you guys have found this very helpful. And of course, if you need anything, you got my phone number, you got my email, you got the call. Don't hesitate to ask. Also, Facebook group, which I'm about to go be quite active on this evening. So hope this has helped, and we will talk soon.